Hello, my name is Nigel Turner and welcome to my workshop. Ever since I was around 14 years of age, I have enjoyed messing about with motorcycles, particularly off-road bikes. Not only riding the bikes but also enjoying building, rebuilding, modifying the bikes in my workshop. The current focus for the last 6 years or so has been pre-65 trials bikes. I've previously posted some of my workshop endeavours on Facebook in picture book style posts on a number of groups such as pre-65 dirt bikes, trail, greenlanders and scramblers, Triumph 350 and 500 twins and various Tiger Cub Facebook groups. These posts have generally had a very good response. I've watched the likes of Michael Waller, Paul Bodie and others on YouTube building and modifying their motorbikes in their workshops. And as I'm about to start my next project, I thought I'd have a go at videoing this process. Please bear with me, this is my first attempt at such a thing and hopefully it will get better. As an introduction, I thought I might start by showing you my small collection of motorbikes and talking you through what I've done with these over the years. And then also give a quick tour of my workshop, its facilities, and then introduce you to my next project. Thank you very much. Cheers. With respect to my next project, that's going to be based on a Triumph Tiger Cub, but some unusual modifications to the engine, including a bigger bore and a longer stroke, and I'm going to attempt to build my own frame. I'll give a little bit more detail at the end of this video, but look forward to creating some interesting videos of the work as it starts and progresses. Thanks very much. Hi again. So let's start having a look at my bike collection. And I'm going to start here with my Tri-Greaves, the first pre-65 trials bike I attempted to build some 6 years ago. I've recently done a 100-mile long distance trial on the bike. It involved a lot of water, rain and wet. It's had a quick clean off that needs a further clean and oil over, but I can talk you around the bike and all the work that I've done to build it up to where it is today. Thank you. Here's a couple of pictures of the Tri-Greaves as it rolled out of my shed after being sat dormant for some 30 years or so. So I'm starting with my Tri-Greaves, affectionately known as Boo, which you'll see when you look at the registration how it got that name. The basic frame is a Greaves Model 24 MDS, registered in 1962. The engine, a Triumph 3TA twin, originated as 350 and now converted to 503cc. This potential project lay dormant in my shed for some 30 years. Approximately 6 years ago, when I decided I wanted to have a go at pre-65 trials, I thought the Tri-Greaves was just a project to build up for the sport. The bike is quite a mixture. The MDS 24 Greaves motocross frame, of, as I say, about 1962 vintage, with its unique cast aluminium front beam and headstock, and so-called banana leading link forks are probably slightly later, around 1966. And then you have the paddle hubs, which I believe are off a Greaves Hawkstone. Slightly earlier, probably about 1960. I've uploaded a couple of shots as the bike was wheeled out of my shed in a loosely assembled form some 6 years ago after its long dormant wait. The frame was quite a mess. I believe someone had fitted an engine with a right-hand drive chain on it at some point. The swing arm and its mounts and rear subframe had been bent to suit this application. The Triumph Twin hadn't been properly mounted in the frame, so I needed to make some engine plates to suit. But didn't want what I'd seen before with other Tri-Greaves, is the use of two large engine plates wrapping round underneath the engine and back to the rear of the engine. Such engine plates tend to look very heavy and are deep underneath the engine, reducing the ground clearance. So I decided the best way forward was to make a tubular cradle, which also makes a nice platform to mount a decent sump guard. The first thing I did was mount the frame on a frame jig so I could sort out all the alignment problems. Then I could work on the engine plates and then the tubular cradle. I wanted a reasonably high and far back as possible location for the engine in the frame to help with ground clearance and as not to load too much weight on the front wheel. Once the engine plates were made, I could see there was enough room to take one of the exhausts through the engine plates and then allowed to tuck the rest of the pipe between the engine and the tubular cradle. Although it looks like the exhaust is virtually straight through, there is actually a silencer running underneath the swing arm. The oil tank is fabricated from 1.6mm aluminium sheet. Holds approximately 1.5 litres of oil. I've tried to make it so the welding wasn't too visible and didn't look too slab-sided. I did a bit of makeshift English wheel work to try and give a sort of three-dimensional look to the outside of the tank. The filler cap is located under the seat and is easily accessed just by slackening the front seat bolt. The fuel tank is B40 type, which I had to modify to give some clearance for the top of the engine rocker box. The ignition is Electric's World, which removes the old points, external Lucas coils and all of the Lucas alternator that would usually live inside the clutch cover here. as I plan to be doing a small amount of green lane type riding, I thought it'd be a good idea to at least have a brake light and horn. So I chose a Electric Swell model of ignition that had a small lighting coil and uses a capacitor rather than a battery to smooth out the voltage a little bit. I've recently added the headlight as I was just done a long distance trial, 100 miles, that potentially finished in the dusk, and actually on the day it turned out to be pouring rain with quite poor visibility, and was useful to have a light on just to be seen by other traffic if nothing else. Another thing I try and do is add a decent paper element oil filter and a magnetic sump plug. I use a K&N 155 element, and here I've machined up my own housing. The magnetic sump plug I've machined on my lathe and fixed 6 small rare earth magnets into it. It's quite surprising how much debris these pick up. The bike has a relatively small bore AML monoblock carburetor. It performs very well and gives it a good pickup from tick over, no coughing or splattering. I like the monoblock carburetors and in many ways prefer them to the concentrics. As long as you get a carb body with a not particularly worn bore and a good slide fit, they work very well. One thing I do is make my own top for the carburetor, incorporating a seal, as this can tend to be quite a bad air leak. I think it's a good looking bike. It certainly draws attention whenever I drop in at the odd bike meet, etc. Also, you really can't beat the sound of a Triumph Twin blasting up a loose dirt trail. It certainly brings a smile to my face. Here's a couple of pictures of the Tri-Greaves in action. So today we're out in the garden to have a look at my just completed Triumph T90 based trials bike. The main frame loop is T90, but the rear subframe I've made myself to be lower and narrower than the original unit. The front forks are Triumph TR25 from around the 1970s. These usefully have aluminium top and bottom yokes, and the damping can be approved for trials use. The front wheel spindle is bespoke, turned out of high tensile steel, made to suit the Triumph forks and also the Tiger Cub hub, fitted with slightly larger diameter bearings. The exhaust system's made from pre-bent stainless steel sections, which I buy from eBay, then cut and whirled to suit the application. The silencer I've fabricated from 2mm thick aluminium sheet and then TIG welded together. It has a small amount of fiberglass exhaust packing in to help silence the vehicle. The oil tank's a bit of a Drayton copy again, except inbuilt is a Can-Am oil filter on the return side. The filler is under the seat that snaps on. The kickstart is, I believe, a Sherco one with my own steel lower fabricated. Works well, clearing the footrest, so you don't have to fold the footrest over. The fuel tank is my first attempt to fabricate and weld my own aluminium tank. Which has worked reasonably successfully. I tried a cub tank, but it was rather small and lost in the middle of the rather long frame tube. The swing arm is basically standard, but I did elongate the adjustment slot so the wheel could be moved further forward than normal, effectively to shorten the wheelbase 3/4 of an inch or so. The sump guard is 3mm alley, gives nice protection to the underside and the front of the cases. You can see the offset spacers holding the taper roller bearings at the top and the bottom of the headstock. The rear hub is Rickman. And a sprocket machined from a Talon blank. The footrests are on aluminium hanger plates, and you can see a aluminium bespoke brake pedal as well, and chain tensioner. I envisaged and started collecting other parts of this bike about a year after completing the good old Tri-Greaves, but a silly crash during a trials event on my Tri-Greaves, which resulted unfortunately in 4 broken ribs and a slightly damaged lung, made me rethink my requirements for a competitive pre-65 trials bikes, and the T90 project was shelved for a few years, and hence it has only just been completed some 5 years later after first envisaging the bike. Hi again. I've ridden the T90 in a proper trials event to give it a shakedown before painting. It's a nice bike to ride, and it certainly meets its objectives, being some 18 kilograms lighter than the Tri-Greaves. It has nice light steering and good suspension, but ultimately you can't get away from the 40 kilograms of Triumph twin engine. So I've passed the T90 on to a good friend who I often ride with at events, so I'll still be able to see how it performs. As for my current pre-65 competition bike, I now ride a Tiger Cub, which I'll talk you through. It's a great little bike, it's much lighter for me to handle. Thank you. This is just come back fresh from doing a trial last weekend up at Bagshot near the M3 on a bit of military land, which is a place I've regularly rode over the years, and a great little bit of land for a good trial. The frame is completely stock, along with the subframe and swing arm. The front forks are Tiger Cub heavyweight forks, although the internals have been replaced with Honda SL internals. The front wheel is a modern aluminium copy of a Tiger Cub hub and aluminium rim. Rear wheel is an old flange type aluminium rim with stainless steel spokes and standard Tiger Cub hub. The sprocket is a Talon blank, which are machined to suit the hub. The oil tank is a standard Cub tank. Similarly, brakes and brake plates are standard Cub. The footrest, brake pedal, chain tensioner have all been replaced with aluminium hanger and these quite nice stainless steel cast footrests. I try and make the brake pedal, footrest hanger and train tensioner all to be nice and light but well tucked in. Position the footrest roughly in line with the front of the rear tyre, which seems to be about the right place to suit myself. The fuel tank, I believe, is an old Wassel fuel tank, but I did modify the tunnel just to make the tank sit down a little bit lower. The seat, as with my Tri-Greaves, is on a homemade aluminium base, and again has my amateur attempts at sewing to make a cover. I like the aluminium mud guards, which I think came from Sammy Miller's, although they are rather fragile and quite easy to bend up during the one or two little incidents you have doing trials. The front mudguard brackets are made from solid 8mm aluminium rod, again bent and fabricated to suit the application. The handlebars are aluminium Renthal type, and I've made my own little clamps to just raise them a little bit. The headstock bearings I've replaced with taper rollers and made my own stem for the bottom yoke to suit the bearings. As explained on my chat about the Tri-Greaves, I fit a oil filter with a paper element to most of my bikes. Here you can see a housing that I've turned up to hold that element, and in this case for the Cub I've finned the housing just to give a little bit of additional cooling to the oil. The ignition is another Electrics World system. This is purely just kick and go, no lights and no additional generator coils, but it's nice and compact and very, very reliable. I mounted this on my own bracketry here inside the casing, so that you can actually take the clutch cover off and everything stays in place, so you can time with a strobe with the cover off. What you will notice on the engine is this very different clutch operating mechanism, which I've made to give a much lighter feel to the clutch. Also means the clutch cable is very short and doesn't go through some of the tight bends that the standard cub cable does. This really does give a absolutely one finger clutch operation. And if you look over here at the cover on the timing side, you can see where I've grafted in a little shaft and a cam that operates straight onto the end of the main shaft. You can also see the kickstart where I've made my own bottom that connects to the kickstart shaft and used a Sherco steel kickstart. Again, like the Tri-Greaves, the beauty of this is that it will clear the footrest even when the footrest is in the down position, so there's no mucking about folding the footrest up to start the bike. I've added a lightweight side stand to the swinging arm. The top portion of the side stand is steel, and the latter half of it is actually made of aluminium. The exhaust system, bit like the T90, is made up of stainless steel bends that I've purchased, then cut and welded together to suit the application. And then it's got my own fabricated aluminium silencer, all nicely tucked away just to keep it out the way of things. The engine is a relatively standard Tiger Cub. It uses the later big valve head. It's low compression for easy starting and nice reliable tick over. And it's got a relatively standard set of gear ratios. Although I have fitted a smaller crankshaft sprocket to reduce all the overall ratios on the bike. That means it really will trickle along at a very slow speed for tight trail sections, but is really limited to about a maximum of 30 miles an hour on the roads. Again, back to this sort of discussion, you can't really have a pre-65 bike that's got suitable gearing for a bit of road use and competitive trials. The carburetor again is a AML monoblock, and as I said before, on my Tri-Greaves I usually make a new top with a gasket in it so it seals the top of the carburetor. Again, this is a very small bore. It's something like 19 millimeters. This, as I said before, gives the engine a really good pickup off tick over and low throttle, with the carburetor being the sort of smallest orifice in the inlet track, means the airflow is much quicker through there, which aids pickup. ultimately you won't get as much flat out performance, but this is a trials bike and it's the bottom end that I'm really interested in. As with a Tiger Cub with standard frame, squeezing a 4-inch trials tyre onto the bike is difficult. I've offset the engine about 4 or 5 millimeters. I don't know if you can just see a spacer down there, and similarly one on the front, just to try and move the engine across a little. Additionally, I managed to move the engine sprocket over a couple of mil to gain a little bit more, but as you can see, the chain still is very tight to the tyre. Not a lot of room for chain guard. And if you look at the other side, again, you'll see the tyre, if you can see it, is really close to the swing arm. I think ideally I could do with widening the swing arm of this, or half an inch or so, just to make those clearances a little bit more generous. Rear suspension is modern NJB shocks, which do the job okay, and yep, that's about it on the Tiger Cub. Thank you. I nearly forgot the sump guard. This is made out of both 4mm and 3mm aluminium. Try to have a reasonable flat section underneath, so if you're clambering over a log, it tries to keep things more stable. And it to be wide enough just to cover that rather sticking out clutch and alternator cover. As I said, with the frame, it was in very good condition. Didn't have one bracket removed or any mucking about with at all. So I was very reluctant to cut anything off this frame or weld anything additionally on. Just wanted to keep it in the good condition it was. So the front of the sump guard is secured with this aluminium clamp that I made, and if we go around the other side, the rear of the sump guard is secured with a bolt going through the original footrest positions. Also, you can see the centre stand brackets just protruding a bit out the bottom of the sump guard. Again, this was done just because of my reluctance to want to actually cut off any part of the original frame. Here's a couple of pictures of the Tiger Cub in action and a short video. So that's my Tiger Cub reviewed, and takes me on to the last bike in my collection. My 1974 DT125 Yamaha. Not exactly a pre-65 trials bike, but a bike that I've owned since almost new, 1976, and in the late 70s and early 80s certainly evolved a long way from the original Yamaha DT125 it was in those days. So let's wheel this one out so we can get round it, and I'll give you a quick talk round it. Thank you. So, quick look round the Yamaha. The mainframe loop is still DT175. The rear suspension was altered quite a lot, moving the shock mounts from up here down, forward and lower, and adding this additional bracing. The rear swing arm mounts, if you can see, were back and up here, and they've been moved forward and with some new bracketry to hold the lower end of the shock. The front forks are metal profile, again of 1976 era, and the engine is a later, I believe around 1978, DT175 6-speed motor out of the first monoshock cantilever suspension bikes they produced. Wheels are Suzuki SP 370. Basically the earlier Yamaha wheels fell apart, the cush drive totally wore out and they needed replacing, and the Suzuki wheels were something at that time I had around, but actually are a bit stronger and have slightly better brakes, so do the job quite nicely. The fuel tank I designed, cut out a sheet and fold it up, but back in those days I didn't do aluminium welding, so one of the welders where I did my apprenticeship did the aluminium welding for me. Similarly, the exhaust pipe, an expansion chamber, I cut out all the shapes, worked out the profiles, folded all the material, but then had someone else do the welding for me. A gentleman called Dennis Evans, who's still around and was a real inspiration to me when I was sort of 13, 14 years old, as he used to build complete bikes, frames himself, anything from schoolboy scramblers up to road racers, and a wonderful gentleman. The airbox again is fabricated, welded out of aluminium. The seat is a fiberglass base, which I can remember back in the day making with my father, and again a bit of my crude attempts at sewing to make the cover. So a bit like Trigger's broom if you watch Only Fools and Horses, but actually a great little bike that I've done many miles of green laning on, the odd enduro, and still is a very capable little machine. It's currently just been got running again after about 6 years storage, but as always you pull it out the garage, take the clutch apart, which is inevitably seized together, clean the carburetor out, and away it goes. A wonderful little bike. Hi again. Let's have a look at the next project and go over some of the parts I've got for this and what I'm going to be doing. So let's start with the engine and the cylinder. First of all, I've got this rather nice cast aluminium barrel made by a gentleman called Max Haynes, which has got a 69mm bore and takes a Honda piston. I'm going to be using that in conjunction with a square head, which I've managed to obtain. They're quite rare and not cheap. This one needs a bit of work. It's got a fair bit of damage. Don't know what someone's been doing to dent the rocker faces and even take a bit out this rocker spindle. So much. Similarly, this side is got a big ding in there and a little crack up here that'll need sorting out. Plus we've lost a fin here, which I'll need to weld a new one on. So that's some of the work there. Long stroke fly wheels. I've turned up these, probably best part of a year ago now, and managed to add some additional material around the rim here. Also, I won't be taking so much material out for the balancing, just to try and maximise. I should be able to get probably 0.5 kilogram extra weight on the flywheels, and this will have a stroke in the region of 69-70mm. I've got to finalise that before I finish machining these. I've got a Meriden off-road roller bearing big end. It's a shame now that Chris has passed away. Not sure if those will be available again. I've got some late crankcases. The throat of them will obviously need machining out. Be one of the early jobs to suit the larger liner of the barrel. And one of the more unusual things I want to try and do is mount the electronic ignition, PVL in this case, on the timing side here. The reason for doing that is it's always niggled me, the really large overhang that you've got on the drive side of a Tiger Cub engine. So again, something I'm trying, really just partly because I'm an engineer and like playing, and like to try things differently. Frame wise, nothing started yet on that, and I'll do a bit more on that in a minute. But wheels wise, I've got this quite nice compact little REH front hub and brake plate. I've got a Rickman rear hub and wheel, but that will need a new rim and relacing completely. And I'm pondering about the forks, but I've got this set of Sprite forks, which are sort of Siriani copies. They need the stanchions sorting out, rechroming, but may use those, or I may do something else on that. I'm still thinking about that one. So again, that's a little bit of a quick overview. Let's go and have a quick chat about the frame. Welcome to my office. I do a bit of CAD work. It helps not go through too many iterations of things sometimes, and when I'm doing things like complex machining bits, wheel spindles with tight tolerances, etc., to have a proper drawing I find useful, and also it gives you a good sort of permanent record. So with respect to this next project, the Tiger Cub frame, what I've done here is model my existing Trials Cub frame and wheels, and basically to capture the geometry of the bike. The engine looks a little strange in this model because it's a scanned image, just using my iPhone to get a 3D scan. And the idea of this is to capture the existing geometry, but then also to superimpose and work with the geometry and basic dimensions of the bike that and frame that I'm going to produce. Things like, at the moment, the swing arm is very tight to the rear tyre, so it needs to be wider. It also needs to be slightly longer because, again, the sort of mud clearance between the extremity of the tyre and the front of the swing arm is too tight. Also here I can play about with head angles and the amount of trail, etc., and also just get basic dimensions of the new frame, which will just help with ordering tubing and laying out the various parts of the bike. So although I'm not going to do a absolutely detailed design of the frame on CAD, it will help me get started and hopefully avoid not too many trial and error sort of goes on things, even though I'm certainly used to trial and error and still do quite a bit of cardboard engineering with templates and things like that. But yeah, the CAD I find really quite useful to give me a head start. So let's have a quick whiz around the workshop. I won't overdo this, as hopefully you'll see each of the machines in use when I'm working on the new project and get much more detail from that. So over in this corner we've got a 20-ton hydraulic press, which is not only handy for doing crankshafts and things like that, but also comes in very useful for folding things like sump guards up and that sort of job. Makes quite a handy sort of metal bender and former. Here I've got a little cut-off saw, another great and useful little bit of kit. What I particularly like with this is that you can just set it going, leave it going, automatically turning itself off once it's hacked its way through whatever you've got in the vise. It's about, I think, 4 or 5 inch capacity with round bar. Over here got a bit of material store, things like my frame jig, small pipe bender there, does about up to inch capacity in thin gauge steel. I have got a hydraulic pipe bender, but it's a big old lump and very hard to handle, so I don't often use that. Over here got a double-ended bench polisher and a conventional pillar drill. Moving on into the machine area, I've got a nice Christensen Swiss milling machine, toolmaker type machine, very versatile. Got a Bridgeport style vertical head on there, but also can take a horizontal arbor and support, or even another vertical head that's driven off the main motor in the base of the machine for chunkier jobs. Then we got my lathe, which is a Colchester Chip Master. Both this and the milling machine I've owned for about 40 years. They came from British Aerospace, where I worked many moons ago, and when they closed up I managed to purchase some of the machines. Both the lathe and mill, recently I've added digital readouts to these. That just does make life a lot easier for machining. Couple of bench grinders. Then in this corner got a Clarkson cutter grinder, which not only is useful for sharpening cutters and drills and things like that, but can be used for other applications such as refacing cam followers, and I've put centers on it sometimes and do a little bit of cylindrical work, things like that. Over here, a fairly new addition to a workshop. Not new, but a Startrite bandsaw, 1960s vintage. Brought this for a couple of £100. It needed quite a lot of work to get it usefully running. Probably spent another couple of £100, but now I've got it. It's a great bit of kit when you're doing things like engine plates or brackets for frames and things. Cutting those out is so much easier than hacksawing, angle grinding or whatever else. Over here, my main bench, welders. I've got MIG and TIG, although I've virtually used TIG for 90% of what I've got now. Hardly use the MIG welder. The TIG also can be used for stick welding, so that occasionally I do that, but mainly it's all TIG. The set's AC and DC, so it can be used on aluminium and similar sort of materials. Then if we go through here, I've got my other little shop. So here I've got a bench where I do the sort of clean work, engine assembly. It's away from the swarth and dust and grinding materials of the other workshop. On here I've got ultrasonic cleaner, surface plate. So as I say, do engine assembly in here, all the fine measurement stuff, using mics and height gauges and such things like that. And then I've got racking with sort of latent projects and various bits and pieces. There's a store, keep everything reasonably neat and tidy. And that's a very quick little whiz around the workshops. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and I haven't bored you too much. As I said, I'm new to this and would very much appreciate any comments and feedback, whether it's too long, too short, the type of content, etc. The next video should be a lot more doing rather than commentary about the work that I've done in the past, and hopefully will be much more interesting. If you've got any specific questions or comments about anything I've discussed or gone over, if you want any more detail, feel free to contact me so I can either answer those questions or give more specific content on the next video. I could have put a lot more in about each of the actual bikes that I've built. As I said before, I've got a lot more photographic information on and step-by sort of how-to on things like making tanks, exhaust systems, other bits and pieces. I haven't included these because I've already got somewhere in the region of 50 minutes of video, and I think that's long enough for a first video. But again, would be happy to receive feedback on whether you want to see any more of this sort of previous work that I could put together in sort of a slideshow type fashion and give some sort of commentary about It's my aim to try and put together a video every month or maybe a couple of weeks, and hopefully from what I've shown you so far you'd be keen on viewing these future videos and the progress on the next project. So if you're keen to follow, please subscribe. It raises my YouTube profile, doesn't cost you any money, just means that you'll get notifications of when I put new stuff up. Many thanks for viewing. I look forward to producing the next video and your future feedback. Many regards and take care.